Hi everybody, welcome back to Devex at COP26. I'm here with Preeti Sinha, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Capital Development Fund, and we're going to be talking a little bit about their work and how it relates to climate. Preeti, thank you so much for joining us. Could you explain for us, first of all, for those viewers who might not be so familiar with the UNCDF's work, a little bit about what you do and particularly how it relates to climate finance?
Yeah, thanks, Will, and good morning and afternoon to all. So on behalf of the UN and many partners of ours in the UN, UNDP, UNEP, FAO, I want to bring to you today the UN Capital Development Fund. You know, we were started back in 1966, meant to be a fund for the least of the developing countries. This was done by the member states. Some vision of it being kind of what IDA is today, the IDA, the World Bank. So what they did for us is give us instruments. We have financing instruments within UN Capital Development Fund. So we can do a whole range of instruments, starting from the grants and technical assistance to loans, guarantees, and now we're doing increasingly 4 or 5 blended funds and bonds. So I would say we are a hybrid development agency and a hybrid development finance agency within the United Nations. And what we do quite importantly for us and for the entire UN system is to work with UN agencies to issue those kinds of additional instruments, whether it's in environment, climate, women. And of course, we first keep our countries at the fore. So we work with countries, we work with the UN system.
Wonderful. Yeah. And can you explain a little bit about how that relates to specifically climate finance, which is obviously huge on the agenda of this COP26?
Yes. Well, for me, you know, country leadership and country ownership of the issue is the most important. So in terms of our work on climate, we interlog very closely with the countries. And in our case, we are mandated to cover the 46 least developed countries. And these we find are exciting frontier markets, lots of development to do. So somewhere build new better. What we do is climate adaptation and climate mitigation. So on adaptation, we have a facility called LOCAL, which stands for Local Climate Adaptive Living Facility. Here we go in and we really help the countries at the local level to do climate adaptation. We give them performance-based grants. So the grants are sort of benchmarked to performances that they'll do in creating adaptations with the youth, with the local communities. And when they do that, we help them get accredited to other vertical funds, you know, like the Green Climate Fund and so on. So we've done that for about 3 countries, get them direct access. So this is important. So some of the keywords, direct access to funds, working with local communities, because a big topic at the COP here, COP26, has been a lot of this money is being announced, but it's not reaching the local levels. So as you'd see from our name, the idea is to be with the local community. So yesterday we were with Gambia, for example, and Gambia has been the top in its NDC announcements and achievements. And they said as well, we would like to see the capital flow down to the local level. So that's on the adaptation. On the mitigation, it's much more on the renewable solar energy projects. So again, giving an example of Gambia again, that we created a guarantee. So it's a financial instrument. It's no longer just a plain grant. And we guaranteed a solar plant for 10 megawatts. And that brought in, we put in 9 million of guarantee, that brought in 15 million of private capital. So that's that de-risking that's being also talked about at COP this year. And then we can come to blended finance, which is a big example as well here.
Sure, if you could tell me about the blended finance you have.
So again, one of the things we've done is we've created a fund called the Build Fund. It's a blended finance. It's one of 3 or 4 I could talk about. And this is in partnership with Bamboo Capital, a very well-known impact fund out of Geneva. And this fund, it's 250 million, 50 million in first loss, put up by governments such as Luxembourg, Norway, the US. And that will invest in SMEs, in LDCs being least developed countries. So we went ahead and put in, again, a $500,000 loan. And remember, we work in the last mile. And for these countries at their stage of development, these loans are quite valid, quite responsive, because they help companies get off the ground, because these companies don't have any access to finance otherwise. So this company called Mavezi, and it's a solar distribution company. It makes solar products. So between Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, they're going to distribute solar products. So again, bringing in the mitigation, bringing in renewable energy. So we would love to see these countries, the least of the developed, being on the forefront of climate mitigation adaptation.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you deal with loans and you also deal with grants. You'll be aware of the debate between, people want more grant-based climate finance as opposed to loan-based climate finance. Where do you kind of sit on that side of the climate finance debate? Do you think there is place for both?
So again, I would go back to the country. So we've had great dialogues with Papua New Guinea here as well. And I think it's encouraging the countries. Yes, it's giving them a certain amount of grants. We always shape our grants in the form of technical assistance, technical assistance to the government to do policy, to do infrastructure, to do loans. But then really encouraging them to use those grants to get ready for the financial markets, so to bring in the loans. So we call it an investment continuum. And maybe that's a word that could be used here, that grants are good and they're needed to take off. Sometimes the projects, the companies, but let's move on. And what we do is we give loans from our own balance sheet, which are concessional, and that gets people ready for the commercial loans. So the local banks, the local financial institutions start lending. So an investment continuum, that's the word I'd use.
Coming from a private finance sector background, as you do, and moving into the UN system, particularly working around, issues of sustainable development, what are some of the key things that stand out for you as either good or bad and need to be worked on? Great
question, Will. It's actually, let me take it to the vision. So after being here about 9 or so months, the good and the bad, what I want to do, I want to see more country leadership, the voice of, the developing countries on the table, expressing what they need, right? And I mean, how does the other countries know what they need? Let them express it. So I want that. So for example, Kenya, they've decided they want to plant trees, 2 billion trees. So we were on a panel with Kenya, tree planting. So I want to know the countries well. I want their voices to be strengthened. At the same time, I want to know the institutional capital, the private capital that's willing to engage in dialogue, and then have at the first phase just a dialogue. So let BlackRock, let all the PIMCOs, everybody present here, talk to countries like Liberia, Guinea, Senegal. Let's discuss. Let the familiarity grow. And UNCDF would like to be in that kind of engagement, and we're doing that in New York. We are bringing some of these country leaders to some of the mid-sized big banks to have dialogues. And as that dialogue goes, as the familiarity grows, I think the investment strategies between the two will grow, between the countries, and public capital always stands ready, but private capital coming in. And then what we need to do is create de-risking facilities. So the public capital now needs to do de-risking so that the private will step in much greater volume, in many more multiples. So as you see from our build fund, it's a 20% ratio. So there's 20% first loss by the public money. And
that's what you mean by de-risking?
Yes. There are 2 types of de-risking. One is a blended fund, the first loss, that covers the losses of a fund, which we hope will not be that high as well. But then there's a guarantee facility, right? So the guarantee in the Gambian solar plant stands ready to cover the kind of, if the offtake doesn't happen, if the local electric company doesn't take the offtake. So they're kind of 2, just de-risking in terms of guarantees and blended financing.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I imagine some of our audience, certainly not all, will be, the companies like BlackRock and so on. They'll probably approach that with a bit of wariness. I mean, what might you say that would either placate these kind of anxieties about these very large private sector companies getting involved with issues like sustainable development? Is it part of UNCDF's role to make sure that's done in a more equitable way?
Absolutely.
How do you respond?
Well, this idea is coming from BlackRock on the de-risking. So Larry Fink, I think it was in either the G7 or the G20, has called upon public capital to provide him the kind of the de-risking, and again those 2 facts, so that BlackRock money could enter into sustainable development. So I would say you would see that at COP here a lot. That has been one of the main themes of engagement of public and private capital. Mark Carney, with his background in the banks and now his role currently, has brought together this famous 130 trillion, which is basically all the banks and asset owners coming in half and half, saying we have this capital that will engage. But for them to engage, you will have to see the de-risking happen. Okay. And so there's a call on public capital to think more about creating vehicles, using their money to create the first loss, to create the guarantees so that the private capital can come in.
The BlackRock are quite well known as quite a massive fossil fuel investor as well. Do you worry that with being head of a UN agency associating with them and working with them in this way, that would leave you open to accusations of greenwashing?
I think that is something certainly that would have to be ring-fenced. So let me tell you what we have done in this COP. We've launched a climate ETF, exchange traded fund, which is focused on decarbonizing companies. It's a net zero pledge companies that are in that index. So yes, so BlackRock is not in that index. So we are certainly working first with the first movers that have taken the pledge, that are, and this ETF, for example, will not have any stocks that have any fossil fuel in them. So that's our first priority. I would just say in terms of the dialogue, though, where the money sits, we need to, engage and educate and hear and understand. And I hope that, entities will be able to slowly even try to ring fence part of the assets, and hopefully toward, as we make all these net zero emission announcements, that in the future we'll have that zero fossil fuel aspect. But I think, that has to come step by step. And if you take the developing countries' perspectives as well, they also need to go step by step. So I heard, for example, Nigeria say we can move to gas, but don't take us all the way through, because it's just they have 7,000 megawatts of energy installed.
It's their entire economy.
So we're here, of course, and all the goodwill here at the COP26 to help create that shift. But it's a transition. A great word is transition energies.
So as we speak, COP has not finished. There's still a few days to run. What has been the most encouraging things for you over this past few days?
Yeah, I have really enjoyed seeing the announcements again of these public-private capital funds coming together. So the UK has announced, for example, it said a $2 billion guarantee to the African Development Bank. We've got Bezos and his fund around. We have the Children's Investment Fund around, So they've been, you've seen pockets of investments or these kind of collaborative partnerships of financing going on. For us, the big announcement still to come. So our locale facility.
Yes. Give us any hints as to what it might be?
I think negotiations are on, and they are still sort of going to be announced hopefully this afternoon. Our idea is that we want something like locale, which is very community-based, to enter into the LDC ministerial position. So we hope that will come forward as a financing mechanism that helps countries access more climate funding. So we are hoping to have a line in the declarations coming out.
Okay. And looking on to the year ahead, it's going to be a year of action.
It is.
What do you think is going to be some of the key themes and some of the key challenges that the organization will have to deal with?
The organization?
UNCDF.
Oh my God, for me, it's not a challenge at all. It's a huge growth opportunity. So when we meet in Egypt in COP27, I would want to have this de-risking facility in UNCDF as well. So we do guarantees right now, but we want to raise additional capital on behalf of the UN, or in terms of the UN agencies, to be able to create these vehicles, these blended vehicles. So that's the way we see the multiples of money coming in. And I hope that we will be a player on the guarantee side, on the guarantee field. We're already there, but hope to be bigger and better by then. So those are that's kind of the direct, focus to COP27. Of course, we hope locale will be bigger. We hope lots of renewable projects will be done. We are ramping up, so both the renewable energy investment and the locale investment. And I think Africa will be taking over some of the co-chairing of some of the issues by the time we reach Egypt. So having our focus on the African countries, we hope that they'll be on the table much more and sort of putting their views forward and really helping design the development of their own countries.
Okay, well, it's going to be an interesting year.
It is going to be a fascinating year. And I really hope and thank, the UK government for hosting us this time. They've done an incredible job. And I was there at the Leaders Summit, the World Leaders Summit on the first day. And it was really great energy. My particular hero, David Attenborough, and he always has the right message. He said, no economy is developed yet because nobody is fully sustainable yet. So, it's some sort of we all need to be a kind of zero circular sort of waste economy.
Was this the standout speech for you of the Leaders event?
I think so. I think he comes with such a deep perspective, long years of experience, and truly speaks for the planet. So David Attenborough, my regards to you.
All right.